Well, I know you applauded for them, but as I was watching that screen, I was just seeing potential, weren't you? What a great-looking group of young men and women coming out of high school, and there were some parents mixed in, spattered in there who've followed through and gotten degrees. Just so much for us to be proud of and grateful for. So congratulations to all you graduates. We really are proud of you and for what you have accomplished. That is for certain. Hey, I just want to mention to you as we get going today with the sermon that we are now live streaming our services. And so if you are away this summer on a vacation or you're going out somewhere and you want to be able to see it, go onto our website, reallife.us, and it'll have a timer or just an icon there until the time comes. But then you can click on it and start in. And we are streaming both the worship part as well as the preaching. We did that the first time last weekend, and actually I was away on emergency is an overstatement. So those of you who got nervous, no one died in my family, but there was kind of an important circumstance I needed to disappear for, and I was actually riding down the road, and my son Clay was driving, which made it extra interesting circumstance, of course, at 16 years old, and I was watching the worship service, and I enjoyed that, and saw great music and average preaching. So anyhow, it was really great, and so anyhow, if you'd like to do that, that is always available to you during all of our service times. And then, of course, by Sunday afternoon, if you can't be there for one of the live streaming times, you can always log on to our website, and the sermon by then has been uploaded. We do not upload the worship songs for copyright reasons, but the sermon is always uploaded, so during the week you can always go and catch up on it. Today, we're going to start into a brand new series, and you get to be here from the very beginning. Well, let me ask you a question. Are you stressed out? You don't have to answer out loud, but if you are, I need to tell you that you are in good company because you don't have to look very far to find an awful lot of people who probably feel just as stressed out as you do. No one here would be surprised to learn today that many surveys say that personal stress is at an all-time high in this nation. People, frankly, are struggling to cope with life and to keep up with life. In fact, many are not succeeding. In the year 2012, suicide passed car crashes as the number one injury death in this nation. And the number of annual suicides continues to increase and has risen by 15% just in the last 10 years. And it doesn't look like we'll be getting over this crisis anytime soon because this is a crisis of over. We are overwhelmed. We are overworked. We are overextended. We are overburdened. We are overcommitted and overcome. Quite simply, we feel overloaded. You might say that's not really a big deal, is it, Pastor Todd? But look at the definition of overloaded. To place too great of a burden on. Overloaded is not a place where we can remain without ending up in some serious crack or fissure taking place in our life. Now, this overload actually seems a little counterintuitive and strange when you think about life in this modern day. You would think that some of the benefits of modern living would undo that. In fact, in his excellent book, a book that you ought to buy called Margin by Dr. Richard Swenson, he ponders this as he mentions that we have comforts and conveniences that generations before us could only dream about. We have an unmatched level of affluence, technological advance, and education in our day. We have 10 times more money and things than generations before us had. Yet the average homemaker is exhausted, even though we have better dishwashers, higher-powered vacuums, and washing machines can do things they never could do before. We take longer vacations, have bigger paychecks, cars with more features, but we are less content, less comfortable at our depths, and less fulfilled. Swenson mentions that as a doctor, he increasingly sees more and more patients who have unexplained physical illnesses that ultimately he recognizes are a function of a people who are simply emotionally and physically drained. For many of us, dare I even project, for most of us, there is a real sense anymore that our life is out of control. That we're losing control or grasp of our destiny, or at the very least of our daytimers. And the result is that since we are living out of control lives, our response is to give ourselves over or to give control to something or someone else. Because it promises something: relief of pain, greater success, excitement, some kind of fulfillment that we are lacking. In other words, we are self-medicating through destructive habits or dangerous relationships. Because somehow, in the midst of all of the busyness, there's a voice that says there's got to be a pathway to something more, to something deeper, to something more fulfilling than what I experience. Not a pathway to more activity or more excitement or more noise or more new things, but there is a sense that something is missing and there must be more than my exhausted life is giving me. Frankly, if I were going to write a bumper sticker for our current culture, I think it would be this: I really don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting there fast. And frankly, many of us need an intervention. We need a moment. We need an intervention of wisdom, an intervention of clear thinking. Frankly, an intervention from a God who wants to free us from the things that have us out of control or things that have us under their control. So I've just decided we're going to declare June Intervention Month here at Real Life. All right? That's what we're going to do. We need an intervention because we feel like our lives are out of control. So can you buckle in for a month or 4 weeks to some really honest talk? To some really hard-hitting scripture passages that are come to you and me right where we are at. They're going to help us to be able to get things back in control in some ways that are going to bring us freedom and joy and release and relief like we have not known for quite some time. Because here's something that I want you to know. There are things that we can get control over. Someone say amen about that today. There are some things that we can restore control over. And so we're going to talk in the next few weeks about a few of these things. We are going to talk together about the fact that we can get control in time, emotions, money, and passions. The first we'll start with today is time. How to get control once again of the time of my life. You see, I'm not sure that there is a more time-conscious people than Americans. Today, I hate to confess to you that we started this service 3.5 minutes late. And many of you noticed. 3.5 minutes. But we noticed. Americans are extraordinarily conscious of time. If you've got a watch on your wrist, hold it up. If you ever looked at your phone today to see what time it is, raise your hand. You see, it's unanimous. You see, here's the reality, folks. We constantly ask this question: what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? But I want you to know that in order for us to get control in our lives concerning time, there is a much more important question we need to ask. And it is this: what am I doing with my time? Would you ask that question out loud with me today? Say it with me. What am I doing with my time? It's so important that we ask this because time is the one thing we can't create any more of. We can't make any more time in our life. If you work at it, you can make more friends. Try harder, get a promotion, you might make more money. Get creative, you might make some more opportunities in your life, but you can't make more time. Look at the person next to you right now. Go ahead, look at someone around you. They might be taller than you. They might be shorter than you. They might have more hair than you. They might have less hair than you. They might be smarter than you, or maybe you just think you're smarter than them. I'm not sure how it goes. But this much I can tell you, they get the same number of minutes today that you get. We don't make any more time. And there's one other thing about that you really need to know, and it is this. Every person here in this room right now is using their time up. Every one of us is using up our time. Our lives are slipping away as we speak. That's what you see taking place here, don't you? Some of you are like, well, why didn't you just flip that now if you're going to talk about it? Because none of us in this room were just born. Some of the time of our life has already passed before we ever got to today. And your time will continue to pass even as we sit here today. The sand never stops moving. In case you're wondering, there's more than enough sand in there to complete this sermon, so stop worrying about it. You see, the constant reminder that comes to us, and the real help to us when you look sand traveling through an hourglass, is that we understand there's only so much sand. There's a limitation to it. Because here's the deal. We tend to waste things that we think have a limitless volume. But we are very careful about things that we know there is a shortage of. And so we're careful. And so God gives us a great instruction concerning the time of our lives. We're going to look at just one passage today, though there are many we could go to. It comes from Ephesians chapter 5, beginning in verse 15. Look what it says. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. You see, not only is time a limited resource for us, but God himself has the final say on how much you get. This is one of the intriguing things about time is we don't get to choose how long we'll be alive. God chooses that for us. And so this is what God says, I'm in charge of that, and here's how much I give you. So that means that you and I, when we have something we want to call our own, but it actually is under the control of someone else, and he just lends it to us for a period of time, the word for that is stewardship. Stewardship. We steward the time that we have here. We're simply stewards of the time God gave us. Do you know what? You're breathing right now because God has said, I give you this time. And so in light of the fact that we are stewards, in light of the verses we just read, there are two straightforward lessons on time that will help you and I get back in control, because some of us feel like, man, Pastor, if you could pick one to be the first one, I can't believe you picked this one because I just feel like it's out of control in my life. Just two truths. The first one is this. Because you understand you're a steward of time, you must prioritize. Prioritizing is the wise use of time. Would you say that with me? Prioritizing is what? The wise use of time. How many have ever said, there's just not enough time in the day? Have you ever said that? There's just not enough time to do everything that I want to do. There's just not enough time to get everything done that needs to be done. And let's face it, there will always be more to do than we can do. There will always be more things we can be interested in than we can chase. We want to try everything. We want to go after every hobby. We want to accomplish every task. We want to chase every dream. But the truth is, there is a limited amount of time for us. And so at some point we stop and say, the wise use of time is to prioritize. It's to say what really needs to take place during the sands of time that is my life. Another way to say it is this, and this is just true, folks. We have time for what we make time for. So you think, I don't got time for this, or I don't got time for that. It's just because you haven't made time for it. Now, don't show hands here, but how many of you wet your pants today? Most of us didn't. And do you know why most of us didn't wet our pants today? Because and I'm not trying to be crass, but we're just humans, face up. Because when nature called, we said, when you gotta go, you gotta go, right? And so you didn't say, well, I'm too busy, I'll just wet my pants. Said this way, let me say it this way. You decided that there was enough time in your day to go to the restroom. You made time for it. You had time for it, as busy as you were, because you said, this matters. It matters because I don't want to have to wash all my clothes every day. This matters. In the same way, some of us need to stop and say, God has put me here on earth for certain things. Am I going to make sure they happen? We have time for what we make time for. Now look, we're not here trying to pretend today that there aren't a lot of things that fill out our lives that seem really mundane. Because some of us, when we're just like, well, I want to picture these great things that God wants to do in my life, but I can't do them because I've got a baby at home. I can't do great things for God because I got to go to work, because I got to earn money, because we got to put food on the table. Pastor Todd, I can't say I'm so excited about the things God wants to do in my life that I never mow my lawn because the homeowners association will come knock on my door. And so we say to ourselves, how can we have this conversation when life is full, a lot of it, with mundane things? Someone's got to wash the dishes. Someone's got to vacuum the carpets. Someone's got to run the kids to the doctor and to soccer practice. And so we say, I can't really do all the eternal things that matter in my life because I got to do all that mundane stuff. But I want to tell you, and I've said this to you before, it is a false dichotomy, a false separation to say that our life is divided into the secular and the sacred. All of life is sacred. When you're driving your kids to the game, it's sacred. Be there. Be there with them. When you go to work, it's sacred. Do the best job you can do. Have the best attitude that anybody has in all of your workplace. When you're mowing the lawn, stop saying, I can't believe it keeps raining and I got to mow this lawn again. Say, God, thank you for a world and the little piece that you gave to me, or at least you gave it to the bank, and over time, I'm going to get it back from them. Pop in your earbuds like I do and listen to some godly music or something instructional that will teach you, and ride that lawnmower for the glory of God. And just say, I'm here and these things have to happen, and I'll do them with purpose and with joy and with excellence. You see, it's not when I'm praying I'm doing something sacred, but when I'm making money or making dinner, I'm not. God has given us the time of our lives. And so understand that that's important. But on top of that, in the midst of all that, we must ask this question: if God gave me children, how am I raising them? If God put me in this church, how am I giving time to move forward the purpose and the value of what's happening at Real Life? Come on, someone say amen just so I feel better about the sermon. If God has placed me in that person's life and he's given me a burden for them, how do I make sure that these things happen? Where am I called to serve? What influence am I called to have? How am I developing people? What are the important things that got to happen in my life in the midst of mowing the lawns and cooking the meals and setting aside all these other things? Because listen, the great thief of time is the random waste of time. It's when we don't stop long enough to really think, why am I here? What matters? What's God called me to do? Because if we just get distracted while we're here on this earth, if we lose track of the things that really matter, then's when we waste the time. That's why I said this idea is that prioritizing is wisdom. It's the wise use. I didn't come up with that. One of the first places in the Bible where that's said, Moses says it. In the Psalms, you thought all the Psalms were written by David. Not all of them. This psalm was written by Moses. And look what he says. In fact, let's read this scripture verse together. It's on the screen. Read it with me. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Isn't that an interesting expression? Teach us to number our days. Folks, he doesn't mean get out a calendar and mark it off. Today's the 2nd, tomorrow's the 3rd, the next day's the 4th. That's not what he means. You don't gain a heart of wisdom because you check things off on a calendar. Teach us to number our days. Have you ever numbered your days? Yeah, you have. Yeah, you have. Our daughter was doing it in the last month. 3 weeks to the wedding, Dad. That's numbering your days. 2 weeks till we go on vacation. Oh, we got to get this done and that done. We got to make sure we plan for the dog, and we got to make sure that we get all the bills lined up and paid because they're going to come due while we're away. That's numbering your days. A week till that paper is due in school, so I got to set time aside and read that book, or I got to go do this research. That's numbering your days. We all do it. And what Moses says is, God, teach us to number our days so that we will gain a heart of wisdom. We'll have the wisdom to know what is it we need to be getting done in the days we have. Now, it works a little different because we don't know. You just said to Pastor Todd, you told us, we don't know how many days we have. That's the truth. It ought to make us even more feel like, since I don't know how many days I have, what are the things that really matter in my life that I got to get done with my life? It's creating a family environment that passes faith along. It's fulfilling that ministry you've called me to. It's having that conversation and writing that letter and tying up that loose end with somebody, and it's going to change their world. And he's called you to something that's going to have lasting significance. And listen to me, if God had no purpose for your life, you'd be dead. If God had no purpose for you right now, he would have called you home by now. So we number our days. We reorient. We prioritize. We shift some things. Well, I'm going to have to pull back a little bit from the hobby because, man, my kids need more focus right now at this age. Or we're going to say, you know what, I have a hard time being a perfectionist, but I'm going to pull back a little bit from that because God has called me to go over here and volunteer, and they need me. It's because we're gaining a heart of wisdom. Because God's telling us what really matters. You know, when it comes to schooling, it's funny this is happening on graduation weekend that I should illustrate this, but when it comes to schooling, to me there was only ever one letter that I really liked. Now some of you, I know the letter you really liked, it's C, because your favorite mantra was C's get degrees, right? But for me it was A. And I'm not a perfectionist, but I am very driven. You've probably figured that out. I'm very driven. And for me, there's A or there's disappointment. I'll never forget, I was working on my master's degree, and I would do the courses in a version that was called intensives. I would fly out to Indiana, be gone for a week, take the class, 8 hours a day sitting doing seat work, then come home, have a month or two to finish up the work, write the big long paper. And I'll never forget, years ago, this is when I was over in Laurel, Delaware, I was finishing up a paper. Now, the person who had taught the class was one of our general superintendents. At that time, we had more than one. He was one of our general superintendents. I was a pastor in this denomination, so I don't know if you think this sounds very Carmel or not, but I wanted to impress him. I wanted to write a great paper. And I finished the paper, but life had been busy. There was a ton of things going on in my church at that time. And when I got done with the paper and finished, it was about a 35-page paper. And when I was done and finished and got ready to print it, I thought to myself, you know what? This is B-level work. What I have put together here and the amount of time I put in this is B-level work. And I remember this like a flashbulb memory. I was sitting there at the desk and I said to myself, I said, you know what? What would it take for me to take this from a B paper to an A paper? And I decided it would take 12 to 15 hours of additional work. I could go back, rework it, do more research, and make it A-level work. Just as I was thinking that's what I was going to need to do, Gabrielle and Tori came running in. It's my two oldest girls. At the time, they were just little girls. And they came running in and they said, Daddy, Daddy, They had their bathing suits on. Will you go jump in the pool with us? Now, at that time, our pool was just this rectangular, about 12-foot inflated thing. It was about 18 inches deep. And I said, why don't you have Mommy go in the pool with you? And they said, Mommy won't. It's still too cold in there. Now, by definition, just so you're all aware of that means it was less than 90 degrees in that water. If you got a 90-degree pool, call my wife. She might think about swimming in it at that time. And so I went to my wife and said, Sissy, and decided I could either spend my time that summer jumping in and out of pools with my little girls, or I could make that paper an A paper. And I decided that B was going to have to do. And I mailed that paper in. And I got in the pool with my girls more than I would have been able to. About a month later, I got the paper back. That professor gave me a B for that paper? I was so mad. I was so mad because when I mailed it in, I was like, God, just honor your child. I'm doing the kids and just fool him into thinking it's an A paper. How dare he be smart enough to realize it was B-level work? But you know what, folks? I'm pretty certain that one day when I stand before God in heaven, he's not going to say, Todd, let me just review some things with you. Man, this paper that you did, not impressed. But I can tell you this. God is going to ask me how I raised my kids for him. And sometimes there are just these moments of clarity in this life when we just have to stop and we have to say, what is it that I'm supposed to be investing my time in? And that's a key word I don't want you to miss, is investing. See, we use the word invest more often with money, and we understand the idea. In investing is faithfully and regularly taking chunks, maybe just small, constant investment. And we all know this is investor retirement. So a little money, a little money, a little money, a little money, and it all builds up. And then someday there's that reward at the end when you retire, and there's enough, and it's sufficient, and you get to go do some of the things that you wanted to do, or you'll be able to eat what you want to do. Because why? Over time, you faithfully invested. There's the same concept with time. It's the exact same concept. We have to be willing to invest chunks of time in things that matter, because someday, all that constancy comes to a payoff. Listen, there are moments in life when you're sitting on the couch and the option is channel surfing or putting your sneakers on and taking a 30-minute walk. Channel surfing or taking that run. Or getting on that elliptical, or lifting those weights. And that one decision, that one time isn't going to make or break you. Missing it one time, if you're faithful to exercise, and you don't feel well and you miss it one time, it's not going to break you, is it? You've been exercising for years and years and years and you miss one, you're going to be fine. You're going to pick it right back up. It's also not going to make you just one time. If you, for 20 years, sit on the couch as a couch potato, and you never get out there and exercise, and then you turn 65 and go, oh my gracious, things don't work the way they need to, I think I'll go run a marathon today and make it all up. I promise to be kind when I preach your funeral. Doesn't work that way, does it? Time requires deposits. Time deposits over time that make a world of difference. So that someday when you're 65, you say, I appreciate the modicum of health that I have and whatever part I could play in it because I faithfully gave that time over time for my health made a difference. When your kid is 16, and you've spent 16 years investing in them, putting them to bed and reading to them from God's Word and praying with them and talking to them about what kind of life we ought to live, and you've invested those little chunks of time over time, then they pay their benefit. If you want to say, you know what, my kids, well, they're going to become teenagers someday, and that's when they'll really need to hear it, so I just won't say anything about them, about God, till they turn 16, you will come see me and you will weep. Because you didn't give time over time to what mattered. And this is part of wisdom. The small, constant investments of time. That constancy. Some of you, God has given you a great ability to write. Well, you aren't just going to someday sit down and go, well, I have an ability to write, I'll write a book. You better start practicing that writing. You better start giving some time working to it. Some of you are learning how to play an instrument. You're like, well, someday when I'm older and I'm more mature and everything's developed, my lungs are bigger and stronger, I'll be able to do that. You become a great instrumentalist? You give 20 or 30 minutes or 40 minutes a day practicing it day after day after day, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, and then someday you will bless us in this church as you play beautiful music. It's time given over time. It's quiet in here today. You all right? And this is wise use of our time. Because I know it's easy to just sit down and say, I'm too tired to read a Bible story to my kids tonight or talk to them. I just think I'll just click around on Facebook for a while. And it's not that these other things don't add flavor to life, and it's not that Facebook is owned by the devil. I don't even know who owns Facebook. I hope they're not the devil. There's a time and a place for that, and we're going to talk in a minute about that. But if we're not careful, we lose track, and we miss out on the wisdom of prioritizing. You all right? It leads me to the second one. The second one this passage reveals is this. It reveals the value of resting, which is the good use of time. If prioritizing is the wise use of time, resting is a good use of time. Now there's a principle of balance here that I want you to get. Because our temptation is to look at the sand coming through this hourglass and go, oh my gracious, I got to cram in everything that I can because I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. So we just cram, and we never rest. There's no time to rest. I'll rest when I die. No, if you never rest, you'll just die sooner. And there is value in resting. In fact, rest is part of God's design for us and is an important aspect of time that we need to talk about. Did you know that on the seventh day, God rested after he created all things? And did you know nothing God does makes him tired? So in other words, God created a principle for us that we would live by that's not just, I'll rest when I'm too exhausted. That's not the principle. The principle is rest always matters. And there's a place for it in our lives. Now, some of you think the concept of resting is only for those who are lazy. And of course, I want to take a minute and say, listen, at the risk of the possibility that there's someone here who's simply undisciplined, you're dealing with laziness, maybe you're dealing with depression, you're spending untold hours just lying in bed and not getting anything done. And there's a God who loves you and wants to talk to you about how to deal with that. And for some of us, that may be one thing we need to take away today as we walk away thinking about time. But I want to address it from the other side. From those who don't yet understand the value and the importance of proper rest in our lives. So let me talk about it from 3 fronts. The first is sleep. Some of you think only lazy people sleep. Some of you think that the hours laying in bed are just a waste, but they are not. Sleep is necessary. And can I tell you something? If God didn't want us to sleep, he wouldn't have made it dark every single day. He wants us to sleep. And some of you need to rethink how you're thinking about sleep. Some of you give up sleep because you just sit on the couch and channel surf all hours of the night. Some of you don't sleep because you get caught up in some kind of Facebook spat. And then when you close it down, you're so mad, then you can't sleep anyhow. Some of you need to get your TV out of the bedroom. Come on, someone say amen. Some of you need to get your computer out of the bedroom. Some of you just need to get your body back into the bedroom, and you need to get the appropriate amount of sleep that your body needs. There may be a few exceptions here and there, but for the most part, every person in this room needs somewhere between 6 and 9 hours of sleep. And you can tell me how you can function on 4, and you can tell me how you only are getting 3, and you can brag about how effective that makes you. I do not believe that puts you in line with the rhythm of the universe that God gave us. And I think you need to reconsider the value of sleep. Secondly, resting is more than just sleep. Resting is being willing to have some seasons of slowing down. Now, by season, I don't mean 3 months. Season might mean 30 minutes. Season might mean a weekend. Season might mean I finally take that time to slow down. Every now and then, you need to just make sure you take a picnic and go somewhere and just breathe. In fact, I want to say something today. It's probably going to be my least favorite thing that some of you are going to hear from me at all, but I'm going to say it for you. Every now and then, you need to shut your phone off. What if there's an emergency? Did you think emergencies were just invented once we all had cell phones? Some of you just need to go out and golf. Can I get an amen? Oh, I got a few golfers. Yeah, that's good. Some of you need to start making sure you get a day off because you haven't been doing it. And by the way, if you think you're impressing friends or impressing God when you work 7 days a week, you aren't. You're dishonoring Him. Ooh, it got real. Because God said we need time off. Now, sometimes people think that time off is automatically associated with money. I don't got enough money to take a break. I don't got enough money to go do those things. Listen, I promise you, there are plenty of ways to depressurize that don't cost much of anything. And you need to just figure out what they are. And you can find them if you want to. Here's the third and very, very important aspect of resting. And it is this. We need to be people who rediscover what it means to quiet ourselves before God. That was perfectly timed. Ask me later, I'll tell you how I did that. Catch this. This whole concept that we used for the first half of this sermon about figuring out what God wants us to do and prioritizing those things, how can you figure those things out if you're never with God? If you're never just quiet and alone with Him. If you never stop to try to hear His voice. And listen to somebody like, I don't know how to hear God's voice. I don't know when it's His voice or just something in my head or it's something my kid said that I can't get. I don't know how to hear God. Listen, I can promise you this. The Bible tells us about a God who whispers, not one who screams. And so if you want a chance at beginning to get some direction in your life, there's going to have to be some quietness in your life. Some of you need to find a moment when the radio isn't playing and when everybody isn't screaming and noise doesn't constantly surround you. For me to get that moment in my life, you know what it takes? It takes 4 a.m. It takes 4 a.m. Now I'm going to tell you my weird habit, and you can like it, hate it, do anything you want. And some of you, it's not going to work with you because it's not your work schedule. So what? You come up with your own idea. This works for me. I climb out of bed at 4 o'clock, and I have a chair. That's my meeting chair with God. And God and I take an hour and meet together. And we meet, and I read God's Word, and I pray. And at 5 o'clock, I go climb back in bed for a half hour. That's just what I do. Just how I like to do it. Something like, I could never do it that way. Well, you're not me. God bless you. Go figure out your way. But you know what? It's quiet in my house at 4 o'clock in the morning. And God and I just get some quiet time. Whatever you come up with it. Because you need quiet time with God. I saw a great satirical article the other day, and it said, man cries out, God, why don't you just show me your will, while ignoring his Bible that was 3 feet away. We need time in God's Word. We need time in prayer. We need time even, here's a word we seldom use anymore, to meditate. And we're not rushing away to the next busy thing. Listen, you're going to have to say no to some things to get that kind of time with God, but when you do, He's going to help you know what kind of things to say yes to. He's going to show you how you're going to make a difference in this world. When He calls you to serve, you're going to know it fits in your giftings and in your purpose, and you're going to be able to go all out. All out. You're going to give serious time to it, but you'll be all right. I'm knocking other things out because this is what God and I have agreed. I've been put here to do. Notice that I said that resting is the good use of time. One of the reasons I chose that word is because Jesus chose for himself the term that he's the good shepherd. You know, King David, writer of so many of the Psalms that we appreciate, once said, it's like the Lord is my shepherd. And that's what he said. He leads me beside still waters. Some of you have had no still waters in your life. And you may even be getting angry with me right now in preaching. So you don't understand my schedule. All I know is, for me, I have time for what I make time for. And I need to make time for still waters. And then what happens is, as a result of that, and here's why the word good matters and fits here. It says we redeem time because the days are evil. The devil wants to throw all kinds of curveballs at our life. Man, he wants to be the one that's talking at you. But when we begin to say, you know what, it's God's voice I recognize, then you move towards the good and away from the evil. But there are no shortcuts to getting to where you recognize God's voice. It only comes over time that comes from familiarity because of time. Over time, we become familiar with voices that we constantly take in. For example, every now and then the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's someone I don't know. And if I don't know them, they have to introduce themselves. I don't recognize their voice. Hello? This person starts talking and say, you know, I'm John so-and-so from such and such, and we were at the church or whatever, and I have to be introduced. When my wife calls and I answer the phone and she says, hey, sweetheart, I don't say, who's this? If I did very many times, there'd be a lot of trouble. I don't have to say, who's this? You know why? Well, for one, she's the only person who calls me sweetheart, but there's a second reason why. I know her voice. I know her voice. If we had all the ladies in the room today stand in a line right here and we put a blindfold on me and every one of you said, hey, sweetheart, hey, sweetheart, hey, sweetheart, hey, sweetheart, when my wife said it, I'd say, that's her. I know her voice, familiar. In fact, I know her so well that in my office, in the other building, when my door is open, it blocks my view of the rest of the office. But if Diane comes up into that office, before she's even said a word, there can be multiple people in the office, before she's even said a word, if she comes up the stairs and starts walking across the floor, I know it's her. Because I even know the gait of her walk, because I've got 29 years of watching her walk. I'll let you just interpret that how you want. But anyway. None of my children are in the room to turn red over there. You see, it comes from familiarity, and it comes from time. And I tell you, we don't have to be a people whose lives are out of control when it comes to time. We can find margin. We can get this back under control, but to do so will require the wisdom of remembering the value of time so that we prioritize. It'll come from the good thing of recognizing God also has called us to his rest. To making time to sleep, to making time to depressurize, and especially to making time with him to hear his voice. Someday in our lives, the last of the sand will drop through the hourglass. And as those final grains are dropping through, if you and I can be cognitive in that moment enough to know, here comes the end. I don't want to have regrets of what I didn't do, of how I wasted my life away in things that were random and meaningless, and I missed out on the things that were priority and really mattered. I want to be able to stand before God and say, hey, God, I used all of that for your glory. I want us just to bow our heads together today, and I want to lead us into prayer that just asks God to help us on this topic of time. Lord, today you see us. Lord, you know that we're but dust and we're frail. And we mess up on this sometimes, God, and we get confused and we get distracted and we forget the things that are priority. But I just pray today in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you'd remind us that there are some things that are eternal and matter, and that we can give ourselves to those things, and to do so will require us to drop some other things. God, I also pray that for someone in this room today who's exhausted, who all they're going to take away from this sermon when they go out the door is, I don't know where to start, I'm so exhausted. Lord, would you remind them that you said that we could come to you and you would give us rest. You said we would find rest for our souls. And I pray that for my people today, that God, in the quiet moments as we just partake of you, that you would give rest for our souls. We thank you, God. Lord, this is a moment for intervention in our lives where you talk to us about how we can get things back under control in the time of our lives.